Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Campus Conversations. We're happy that you're here today. I'm Allison Smalley. I work in advancement and alumni relations. I'm here on campus at the university. I just have a couple of items I'll go over before we get started. If you'd like to have your camera on, that's great. We would love to see your faces today. Otherwise, totally fine. Some people are eating lunch and we understand that as well. As you may have just heard, we will be recording the sessions. We record all of our campus conversations. I will send the recording out in an email to everyone that registered, along with a short survey and the slide deck for you too. We would ask that if you have any questions, if you wouldn't mind putting them in the chat. We do find with some of our presentations, questions get answered, especially with programs, topics such as this throughout. So hopefully we will answer your question as we go along. Otherwise, we'll have time at the end for us to answer all the questions. You can use the raise your hand function at that point, or just continue to put them in the chat box. I like to put mine in the chat box as soon as I think of them, otherwise I'll forget. So feel free to do that at any point. I am going to go ahead and turn the mic over to Dean Rothis to introduce himself and talk a little bit about the campus conversation today.
Thank you, Allison. I am Richard Rothis. I'm Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences, or Dean of Class. I have the best title at CMU, so I always love to say that. I'm happy to be with everyone today. We're going to talk a little bit about a brand new degree program we have in class. The program is Public and Applied Liberal Arts. It also has a cool acronym, PALA. PALA is an innovative degree program that embraces the liberal arts core in the way we do it here at class, but joins up with some of our partner colleges to define career pathways so that students can use their liberal arts skills in business and industry. Public and Applied Liberal Arts, or PALA, is one of only 2 such programs in the nation that's intentional in the design as a 4-year program that uses very explicit liberal arts pedagogy to teach students how to use their liberal arts skills and talents in discrete career pathways. Our first 2 pathways, and we hope there will be many, the first 2 pathways are going to be in the areas of business and technology. And today with us, we have 2 of the professors who have been instrumental in creating that program, Professor Christy Brooks and Professor Greg Smith. And we're going to let them tell you about the program. So I'm going to hand it right off to them. Professor Brooks, Professor Smith.
Sounds good. Before we put our presentation up on the screen, I think I'm going to do a little storytelling here. Greg and I got to know each other years ago when we were both chairing separate departments. I was chairing world languages and he was chairing history. And on occasion, we would hire Greg to teach Latin in our department. And every once in a while, I would show up at events or give lectures in his department, but we really hadn't talked. We hadn't talked as chairs, we hadn't talked as colleagues. And so we talked about this problem of silos in universities and what that means for our students. And then we just kept right on talking. We talked about what we shared. We started talking about the liberal arts. We created a program called Critical Engagements that deals with the wicked problems of today. And in an effort to try and get rid of those silos, we reached out to colleagues across campus who might be working on an issue like climate change or immigration or things like that, and tried to build something beyond the walls that we've sort of put around ourselves. And so that's how we ended up here today, thinking not only how do we draw on the expertise of others to get at the really wicked problems of today, or just any problems of today, but also how do we harvest the richness of both what we have in the university and the communities together. And that's ultimately what brings us here today. So just a little background on the two of us, and I'll let Greg go ahead and start the presentation.
All right, thanks, Christy, and everyone for inviting us. This is Public and Applied Liberal Arts, and I want to get started by telling you a little bit about one way we thought of how we're sorely tempted to start this by talking about statistics. And a lot of people on this call don't need to be reminded of these, but we were going to put up graphs that were basically terrifying in depending on your perspective about changes in public perceptions of higher ed, trend lines in the number of students majoring in humanities and the liberal arts, not just in Michigan, but around the country. And then we'll just throw in something about Michigan for good measure, minus the ones who aren't planning to go to college, a number that may be changing. And then we realized that this is a terrible way to start a presentation about a groundbreaking new program at CMU. So if you see what we did there, the statistics are out there. We've got them in your minds, but now we're going to start in a different direction. So take two. Let's just remind ourselves of what I think most people in this conversation already know, but that is that liberal arts majors, including our alumni, get jobs. We have data for this and the rest of these points. Liberal arts majors are unusually likely to get advanced degrees in academic, but also professional fields. They're also unusually likely to end up not just in management or business, but in senior leadership positions in their organizations. One organization I can think of is the United States of America, by the way, where 2 of the last 4 presidents have been history majors, but never mind, I won't go down. This is not a recruiting event, I promise, for history. And we also know that liberal arts majors have skills that all kinds of organizations, not just nonprofits and government organizations, but also private industry have been asking for a while. None of this should be news to people in this conversation. But now let's take a different tack. Back up for a moment to 30 years ago or so, 1994, and we've written a little story here. It's a little bit of a fairy tale, but I think parts of it will ring true, that a student goes to college, and it's just obvious that that's one of the things you do if you are in a position to do so. It's an obvious step toward a good life, toward a good job, reasonable employment, that's rewarding in multiple ways. And then that student chooses, in this case, a humanities or other liberal arts major, like I did, based on what they love or where they have aptitude. And then their parents and they basically know this is a really good investment. It's one of the best investments you can make when you think about risks and returns. As long as you finish your degree, there are some caveats. And then the student begins a satisfying career in a field that doesn't have the name of their major in it. That's because unless you become a history professor or history teacher, usually you don't become historian at Dow Chemical or Ford Motor Company. You do something else. So as opposed to, you can think of the obvious counterexamples, fields like accounting and engineering, where you may well have the title of your major in your job title. Skip ahead 30 years, and here we are. Student goes to college not knowing where anything is headed or what kinds of jobs humans will even be doing in 10 years. Students and parents in general don't know all those things that we know from a couple of slides back. And trust me, Dean Rothis can tell the story here. We have been trying to tell that story, change that, get the knowledge out there for decades now. And so far, it hasn't made much of a dent. So never mind that for the moment. This is just where we are. Students and parents think about tuition, debt, inflation, and healthcare like they did in 1994, but a lot more, I think. They're a lot more concerned. And so they choose a major that has the name of the job in it. And ideally comes with an internship. And meanwhile, employers are still asking for these skills. Okay. So what does PALA do? Public and Applied Liberal Arts. To start with a kind of big picture take, we provide, the program provides a foundation of liberal arts skills, all the things you might think of from big picture analysis to empathy, communication. We're trying to avoid the phrase critical thinking, important as it is, but it, that applies to so many majors. But there are some really quite specific analytical skills and skills of putting points together in ways that make sense to humans. It offers also, though, sustained training in an applied field where liberal arts skills are needed and valued, but might be quite different, not something you'd associate with our college or a traditional liberal arts college. And then also demonstrates that liberal arts majors can make a difference, make the world a better place, but also have sustainable careers. So instead of just promising, instead of telling that 1994 story, which by the way is still true, but instead of just promising and saying, I swear that this is true, we want to demonstrate that while they're here with an internship and so on. So I'm going to turn it back over to Christy.
So now that we've talked in sort of general terms and situating it within today's higher ed educational landscape, what are we talking about? Again, this is a new field, so you're probably wanting something concrete to hang on to. So here, let me offer it. I'm going to throw a word at you first, which you may find yourself scratching your head a little bit about, but we've doubled down on it. The word transdisciplinary. It's a transdisciplinary major that combines core liberal arts skills with an applied field. I will explain a little bit more transdisciplinary, but it's the idea that we begin with a problem and we come to the problem with different sets of skills, but those things are not sort of preordained or cobbled together from different fields. It'll become clear later on. It is truly a genuinely new major. As Dean Rothis explained earlier, this is the second in the nation that we know of, modeled after the University of Arizona. And it does offer a new approach for undergraduate students seeking not academic careers, that although it wouldn't preclude them from that, but really our aim here is to get students into jobs right away after graduation. But there are a couple of important things to note with that overview, that PALA is not a couple of things. It is not a degree completion for students who can't finish their major. That it is not that. It is not an area studies program. And again, getting back to this notion of transdisciplinary, where the problem is first, and the problem might require a sociologist and somebody, a philosopher, and maybe somebody over in engineering. But those things are not preordained. The problem will define who needs to come and help out with the problem. So it's not a nod towards multidisciplinary training at all. Here's how it works. We have 18 hours of liberal arts, and you can see that it's not philosophy or French or history. It's a designator with LAR, liberal arts core courses designed from the ground up. We designed all these together in a group last summer to address real world problems by applying liberal arts skills and methods. And those are especially drawn from our college. And then 15 to 18 hours of coursework outside the liberal arts, including the internship in an applied field where there are known jobs and concrete career opportunities. So again, you've got this twofold. You've got the liberal arts core where those skills are highlighted and refined. I'll talk about the courses. And then an application in an applied field. So this gives you a sense what we're talking about for those courses in liberal arts, the LAR designators, the introduction to the public and applied liberal arts, which will take a look at things such as medical humanities, digital humanities, all these different fields and that are under this umbrella, and introduce students to the field. The second one, we really are, I should mention, in LAR 200 will be in the Clark Historical Library on campus and working with objects there, text, all different types of text, from maps to books to advertisements to yearbooks, CMU yearbooks, for example. The next course, the Creative Lab, Campus, City, and Community, will be going out from from our classrooms into the campus community and then into the city and then broader from that to work on some real issues within those concentric circles. 250 is a real skills class thinking about how we tell stories as humans, what are the ethics of storytelling, especially nonfiction storytelling. So we'll be spending some time on that. 302 is something, again, I've already mentioned here, wicked problems, taking a look at whatever the wicked problem that is identified and finding multiple ways in which to address that together. The capstone seminar will be a final project for the students, and then finally their internship in one of those applied fields. So that is how we've built that. And next slide.
I think it's my turn.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt or take over, but I
No, go ahead.
we're going to do this. But I think you can see you don't need to get this quotation. For those of you who really want the sort of way an academic would put it, and that UConn would say, no way, this doesn't, this only makes sense to professors. But here it is. We can go back to this if you wish. What we're really trying to explain, and what Christy, I think that list of courses really does show, is that these are problem-centered and bring in the disciplines that many of us are trained in after we've identified the problem and are working already together in the same room with our students and with each other. So you can see, as we say here in the second point we've made, that transdisciplinarity or transdisciplinary changes the order of operations, problem first, then discipline-informed investigation. And so there's one other way that we think about transdisciplinary. Christy and I and our colleagues have had lots of fun hours talking about what this all means. And one of the things we realize is that there's a sense in which this is both old in a good way and also very new. It's obviously a new program, but in some ways it goes back to that pre-silo world or even pre-disciplinary in a sense. Many of our disciplines have long traditions that go back many centuries, but back to a world like, say, before the 19th century, where people would often work on a single problem. You would have multiple fields represented, and a kind of more holistic approach to knowledge rather than only technical conferences, journals, and so on. And so we've called that, medieval and Western, real world. There are different ways to think about this. So it's post-disciplinary in a way, but we also still like our disciplines. We want to make sure our colleagues know that, and that I still plan to go to history conferences and so on, and our students as well. But here is what we came up with. So spitballing this, it must have been late at night, but neither of us are graphic designers. And Christy was busy being all space age and came up with the PALA logo below, with apologies to copyright violations acknowledged of the NASA logo. Although maybe, anyway. And then we have the sort of old-timey 18th century public and applied liberal arts, to just kind of demonstrate that we really do see kind of two parts of this. There's a way in which it picks out the best of approaches to knowledge that have emerged, well before 19th and 20th centuries, but also is forward-looking as well. All right, Christy, back to you.
So now that we've dealt with PALA as both new and old, who are we actually thinking about under that idea? We don't think, and again, this is out of respect for our own disciplinaries, we don't think that the hardcore history or philosophy or English or French majors or sociology majors are the ones who will sign up for this. And it's not for students who want to be engineers or computer programmers and who weren't able to cut it. We think that this is a new audience, and ideally new to CMU as well. The students we're thinking of want to have meaningful, sustainable careers. Again, think about the student, the opposition that Greg set up between 94 and 2024. They want to understand how people and communities work. This is something we're hearing more and more now from students as we think about artificial intelligence, for example. These are students who want to make the world a better place. Many of them are that post-pandemic, but who also really want to have the assurance of a job and who want to work in either public or private sectors. So this isn't just NGO students that we're thinking about. We're really thinking about the broad spectrum here. As I mentioned earlier, this is new, definitely new, and I would argue that ours is somewhat different from the University of Arizona's as well. But the University of Arizona launched this program in 2018. And it's public and applied humanities there out of the College of Humanities. It is the fastest growing degree in that college and one of the fastest growing at the university. They've had since 2018, last we heard in fall of 23, they had 331 majors in an institution with over 40,000 undergraduates. So yes, CMU and University of Arizona are two very different entities. But we do think that there's actually room for us to participate in this field. And I would actually argue that I think maybe even our students might be more inclined to do something like public and applied liberal arts. So there hasn't been a measurable decline at all in the humanities majors, the traditional ones at the University of Arizona. They do seem to be the ones who are joining public and applied humanities do seem to be new recruits to the university, or they've come in from technical fields. So it does seem to have opened up a new place in the College of Humanities for students to find a home. So again, we're poised to be the second in the nation. There may be others out there that are right at the same point with us right now. But as far as we know, we're the only one to follow up on the University of Arizona, and definitely the first in the Midwest. So here, if you are interested, you can do a quick Google of public and applied humanities at the University of Arizona. They have been working on this, I think, since 2016, launched in 2018. They have quite a few different areas there. You can see them: business administration, engineering approaches, environmental systems, fashion studies, game studies, medicine, plant studies, public health, rural leadership and renewal, spatial organization, and design thinking. Those are the applied fields. Again, think of that two-part model of liberal arts core skills and then the applied fields. So this is what they've developed. They just added one of them in the fall. So they are constantly working with colleges across campus. They started with the College of Business, and it's just grown really. It's gone like wildfire. And there's really incredible support from across the colleges, which is actually what we've found here as well. So ours looks a little different because we are a different campus. Right now we have 2 applied fields ready to launch in 24, 25, so this upcoming fall. Entrepreneurship with the College of Business Administration, and then resilient environments with the College of Science and Engineering, so thinking about environmental questions. We are under discussion on 2 others at least. There are others sort of in the wings, but fashion and interior design and game studies as well. So we're ready to go, and we have an incredible team with us. I don't know if everybody knows all these folks, but you can see that we come from different places across the university and from within our college. I'm in French. Joellen DeLucia is in English. She's done a lot of public-facing work. Des Harding is our resident futurist. I think he sided with me on the PALA NASA logo. Matt Leash in geography, chair of his department, is an extraordinary, he's just an incredible partner in the liberal arts. Guy Newland in religion, and Greg Smith. That is the group with us right now. Misty Bennett over in the College of Business is an associate dean who has been a great partner as well. So
I think that's it for our slides, Christy. We don't have a sung duet conclusion as far as I recall. So I think we're ready to open it up for questions and discussion.
Yep.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Would you be able to give us some examples of wicked problems that might be talked about or
Yes.
focused on?
Yep. So I can run through, part of this is related to the work that the college has done on critical engagements. Again, this program I mentioned earlier, but I'll just run through what I can remember in my head. Borders and immigration was the first year. The second year was, I think, the end of the world, talking about climate crisis, but also political change. This year, we're dealing with war and peace. Last year, we did another year on water and issues around water. Greg, can you think of anything else?
Yeah, we had 1 year was called "What Does It Mean to Be Human?" We were thinking about already artificial intelligence, even before ChatGPT has changed everything. Good heavens, I know there is another one, but they're kind of classically identified as wicked problems. Usually they're problems without a known solution, which is one of the things that makes them wicked.
Awesome, thank you. We do have a question in the chat. Have you discussed marketing with UCOM? Do you have a contact of University of Arizona to talk about their promotion and recruitments and what kind of students seem to be most interested in something like this?
We have met with UCOM and are working on a rollout campaign right now. We just started that. And so yeah, so we're in discussion around that right now. As far as contacts at the University of Arizona, I actually know, you may have figured out by now that I'm a professor of French. I actually know the dean of the College of Humanities, who used to be the chair of the Department of French and Italian at the University of Arizona, Alain-Philippe Durand. And it was through him that I learned about this program. And so we've stayed in touch. I'm trying to think of the last time we saw him in person, Greg. I think it was in DC last year. But I actually get back to Tucson quite a bit. I am also, I'm a graduate of the University of Arizona. So that I've got a sort of insider connection to those folks. As far as how they advertised it, we've taken a look a little bit at some of what they've done. It did seem to be advertisement largely through word of mouth, although the dean has worked very hard on trying to change the narrative around the humanities in particular. So they had a billboard at the University of Arizona on I-10 in between Tucson and Phoenix, saying humanities equals jobs. So he's been out in the world in a big way. He just published another book. It's on my desk here. The Entrepreneurial Humanities. So he's really been a huge advocate, and he's turned his fellow deans from across the University of Arizona into advocates as well. And again, that's been our experience at CMU. The deans have been working together to support us, but also help us find faculty who might be interested and who are really sharing their enthusiasm about the program as well.
More questions are coming in the chat right now. Can you talk about how the tracks work? Do all students take the same classes, or would that differ at all?
It would differ. Greg, I'm talking a lot. If you want to speak up, or do you want?
Sure, this is actually, at least for somebody coming from history, where basically there are 2 courses you have to take, and then it's all just very open-ended. This is much more structured in a sense. You've seen the list of core courses, which are designed to be taken more or less in order. In fact, I think that's a required part of the sequence. But then it's up to the tracks. The individual fields are 2 that we have so far are, as I recall, reasonably, they're quite specific. If you think about 18 hours, 15 to 18 hours, it's somewhere like a substantial certificate length heading toward a minor length. And so they are meant to be focused in that area. It's one of the things that makes it, for those of us who are thinking of joining us, partners from across the university, it's one of the things that makes it relatively easy to integrate with, so that they are kind of tracked together. I'm avoiding the word cohort because it's not that structured, but they do take the same classes first in LAR, and then once they're on the other side in their applied field.
And I'll just read, so, you know, the public and applied liberal arts majors would be taking those LAR courses together, but then they separate off into their applied field. The resilient environment track, it's a 6-class goal of the resilient environment, is to take liberal arts skills and apply them to 21st century environmental issues. As climates and environments change, the next generation of change makers will need to lead governments, businesses, and nonprofits through how to respond, plan, and prepare human decision-making for changing environments. So that's the first track. Second one, the entrepreneurship track will enable students in the degree to have the skill set to start their own ventures and explore topics pertaining to the financial side of running a business, legal issues, and digital entrepreneurship. So those are obviously 2 different sets of students, but they will share those liberal arts courses.
Thank you. Marcy Taylor, thank you. We also had a year we focused on fake news, another wicked problem. You can see that, absolutely. How long has the University of Arizona offered this model, and do you know if it has translated to more or better job opportunities for graduates?
Like I said, they started in 2018. Their first graduating class was 2022. So we're just beginning to see the results of that now. I don't have statistics here in front of me, but it has been a successful sort of venture for them, again, because they're getting those internships prior to graduation. They make connections professionally before they leave the university, and oftentimes they're hired up in those internship positions, which will come as a surprise to no one probably. But
Yeah, to jump onto what Dr. Brooks said, that their program isn't old enough yet to have the metrics off their graduates, but we've been watching what they've been doing with their internships, and their students are all going into internships with major industry and business partners, many of which were already had partnerships in other areas of with the university there. And those, as happens when great students get internships with business and industry, as soon as they graduate, the businesses and industries say, how about you stay on here? I was on a panel last year with some of the associate deans and others from the University of Arizona, and we were talking about this. So they're at pretty much 100% success at placing all of these students into internships with business and industry, which is, you know, 2018, that's the best first start date. That's the total success indicator for them so far.
Another question, will the individual classes also be open to non-PALA students? I can see a few of these classes that might be interesting for students to take as electives for the museum studies minor, storytelling in particular.
absolutely.
Great.
One come all.
Can you talk a little bit about like the timeline? I know you had said you had met with some individuals last summer and that Dr. Brooks and Dr. Smith, you had kind of got together and started discussing this, but what does that look like from kind of the conception of the idea or the talking about the idea to where you are today and the ability to offer these, you know, next year semester, I suppose, right?
Yep. I don't know if Greg, do you want to do that or you want me to? do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's one that we're sort of casting back because it's one of the most wonderful things about higher education that we're very deliberate in our processes. And so it's taken a while. We've moved, actually, I think pretty quickly, especially we really hammered out the curriculum and the ideas in 2 wonderful days in the middle of summer. The summer must have been 23, or was that
Wait,
just
no,
23?
and
22.
you're not being flip when you say that. It was really an
No,
extraordinary.
it really was. Yeah, sorry. I have been being a little bit flip before about how wonderful it is sometimes, how long things can take. But we've been talking about it for at least 3 years, Christy, maybe more too. And so we're especially pleased to have gotten it through the curricular process as quickly as we did this year with the help of a whole bunch of people. So if all goes well, one of the reasons we're pointing at the University of Arizona's website rather than ours is, of course, we can't have a website until it finally gets full approval all the way through state level and Higher Learning Commission and so on. So that hopefully is coming. But I would say 2 years to hopefully getting started in the fall is pretty good numbers, I think.
And I would add just that we've had an extraordinary team. You know, I think there initially was, well, what is this? And you might have even signed up wondering, well, what is this? I thought we knew about all the humanities and social science degrees. So there was an initial discussion of what this might be, what this looks like. We know what it looks like at the University of Arizona, at least from the outside. So what might this look like here? And then we all sort of came together thinking about things like teamwork, the usefulness of the humanities and social sciences, perhaps maybe even more especially in the face of things like ChatGPT. And how we're needed. Thinking about the importance of telling stories around our communities and working for their good. All of that became sort of central values to us. And then, of course, wanting to get students jobs. And because we came together around those issues, even though we're from different fields, all of us, and didn't necessarily have completely a shared language. We did have the language of those core things from the humanities and social sciences. And because of that, it just really, I mean, I've called them a dream team, and they really, truly are. It's been wonderful to work with everybody involved. And we did have lots of help too. So
And I could add, even also working with folks outside of our college has been great too, because thinking about how a college of business would think about this, or from a science point of view, is super useful for this historian at least. This has really transformed the way I've been teaching my history classes already this year. So it's had that kind of effect as well. I see we have another question.
We do.
Oh.
If a prospective student were to ask you, what are examples of jobs I can get with this major, what would your answers be?
Well, again, I think I would begin with the sky's the limit. But if you want something concrete, thinking about the 2 tracks that we have. So for example, if a student does the resilient environments track, they'll be working in city government. This is something that exists already here in Michigan, working in city government around environmental issues, or perhaps working in a local business through entrepreneurship, local meaning Michigan business, thinking about thinking about the human side of things. Those are all possibilities right now at this point. But again, I think about another possibility would be, I'll pull from the University of Arizona, where, if you think about Netflix or any of our streaming services, they've got algorithms. Sometimes those algorithms go wrong. Sometimes they don't take into account important things about human beings. And hopefully a student from the public and applied humanities degree, this is an actual student who's gone out and said, hey, wait a minute, this algorithm's off here. These are the human beings that are actually watching these things, and this is a problem. So corrections to AI and algorithms. Those are the sorts of things. Greg, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I was about to say no, which always means yes when the person takes the question. So a little bit, it's just that part of the answer to that question will depend on the fields. And so one of the nice things from our perspective is, even though we're going to be very closely involved in the paperwork and other issues surrounding internships, including the relationships, we are also relying on our campus partners for that. So they're the ones who are identifying or helping us identify what internships make sense, which we hope also will be the jobs that make sense for those students. So it could be a wide range. We've already emphasized that even though there is a public dimension to this, a sort of nonprofit aspect in making the world a better place, we are firmly convinced that you can make the world a better place having a job at a company that also makes money, or that is a for-profit corporation, so the private sector as well. We're not just thinking of my beloved Parks and Rec TV show and that, although that's part of it, as Christy just said, that's part of it as well. And if I can just go back to what I think was our first question from Vice President DeHamers about contacts at the University of Arizona. And this is one of those questions I want to go find out more about, and we hope to have more contact and maybe go visit. There are, I want to find out how they got to 331 majors in just a few years. It's quite extraordinary. I think we know some of the reasons, but it will be interesting to know the stories that they have told also in answer to that question about what are examples of jobs we can get with this major. Because when we did meet with UCOM, I'm sure this will be familiar to those of you who have worked on similar projects. I think there are two things. We have to get the word out because this is new. So we are kind of bootstrapping in the almost literal sense. Explicitly in the normal recruiting kind of ways we do, but then there are all the magic that our UCOM folks can do with helping us come up in search and help students realize, oh, this is what I was looking for, even though it doesn't have a name yet in my mind. So
Dr. Smith, I Googled or looked up the university and found out who the enrollment management people are, and I'm in the process of emailing them right now. Multitasking, awesome. Listening and working on that. But I think also we could make connections with their career development center as well to get some answers. Obviously, the faculty and the dean would have some of those answers around what people are doing with this degree, what careers they're going into, but we could certainly match up with their career development center to also talk about how they are packaging that and talking to students and helping them. So that's a couple of things I'll take on. I think, off the top of my head, and not to take up too much time, but I think about all the students, one of the most popular majors that students choose is undecided.
Yep.
And sometimes I think undecided students are that way because they have so many interests, but they don't know how to tie them together. And so I've got some ideas running around in my head around how we can reach out to that population of students, but I'll be in touch with you separately from this to do that. So anyway, I'll be quiet now.
Great. Thank you.
Dean Rothfuss, you have your hand raised.
I do. I love the question of what are examples of jobs I can get with this major, because that's I think that's the power of the tracks in this program. I mean, we're all painfully aware that higher ed is expensive, and life is expensive right now. Our students graduate. We try to keep higher ed as affordable as we can do. I think we do a really good job of that, but we're not going to lie to people and say higher ed's not expensive. It is. And then once you graduate, life is expensive. You have to have a place to live. You probably should take care of health insurance. That's a big deal. Make sure you have health insurance. You may or may not have student loans. You may or may not have car loans. Everyone has their own unique family and friend circle situation. Students cannot ignore what job you're going to get. So for those of us of a certain age, we could roll the dice and say, oh, we'll figure it out. The sky's the limit. We know we can get a job. I'm not going to worry about what job. I just don't believe that's a reasonable expectation to throw on all of our students. Some students are going to do that, and that's fine, and that's great. I think we have a lot of students who would love to major in the liberal arts, but the answer I used to give to them, don't worry about it. You'll get a job with a history degree. You always get a job with a history degree. Man, I don't think it's even a responsible answer anymore. Might not have been a responsible answer in the past, but that's a different campus conversation. So I think this is great, and this is where we have such great partnerships from the other colleges, because we have an entrepreneurship track that appeals to a different type of student. You can go do entrepreneurship in the College of Business. We're not really competing with that. This is entrepreneurship for a different type of student, and it's also going to produce a different major. These students will have entrepreneurship skills that businesses are interested in, but they're also going to have liberal arts skills beyond. And we give all students get liberal arts skills in the Gen Ed. No one gets out of CMU without liberal arts skills, but these are very specific and intense ones, and we know businesses are asking for those. So it's a great enhancement for both the students, so that more students can move out of undecided to, oh, I really did want to study that, but I was worried about getting a job. I think it's going to capture some of those. And then also, we know business and industry are looking for more variety. Not that there's anything wrong with the programs we have, but there's more variety is good. So.
Thank you. We have another question. From the advancement side of CMU, what types of funding or support are you looking for other than scholarships?
Oh, I love that answer. We have the answer for that, but I don't want to. It's the Dr. Brooks and Dr. Smith show, so I will let them answer it.
Internships.
Thank you.
I think we, as Dr. Smith mentioned, will rely in many ways on our partners in the applied fields, because they know best where those skills can go, and they have those partnerships. But we envision more and more, and obviously growth is going to be a part of this. So we are looking for those internship opportunities for our students in ways that they can make a difference, where those skills that they're gaining either in their applied field or the liberal arts skill, or ideally both, will be needed. So Greg,
No, I just wanted to say, especially when it comes to advancement, sponsoring paid internships where the company in question or the organization in question can't afford necessarily. But of course, all of us want all of our interns to be paid, I think, and that doesn't always happen. But if we could have paid internships in particular and be able to offer our students, I think we can reach quite small and yet really essential organizations and companies as well, who don't have an intern kind of budget or pipeline.
And I would add to that, I think, of course, the goal is always paid internships, but we don't always get what we want. And I see Dr. Powell is with us. Dr. Powell is with our nonprofit administration program. She has does great work with a lot of our undergraduates, also with a lot of internships. We have lots of internships in the college for a variety of programs. We hope to have a lot more. And students sometimes turn down internships for reasons that can be heartbreaking, like, I can't afford the gas to go to Midland 3 times a week for this internship. That's a problem that's fixable with a little bit of external support. So top of the goal is paid internships for everyone, but sometimes we can make a huge difference just by giving that level of support to our students. So and networking too, because it's not just that every alum needs to scour where they work for internships. Every alum knows other people. So when opportunities arise, if they give one of us a call and say, hey, I saw this, that will change everything here really quickly for us.
And I think we could also use expertise in our classrooms, just as far as thinking about ways in which we might draw upon the CMU community for help with this. Say we've got a particularly wicked problem that involves, I don't know, road building in Michigan. I don't know why that's the one. Maybe I'm thinking about tomorrow's weather here. If we have an alum working in roads somewhere in Michigan, this is getting to be a silly example, but why not call on that person for their expertise and advice in a classroom?
Yeah, I would
Thank you.
echo that and
Yeah.
say to our colleagues in business and other colleges, you're probably like, what do you mean? Don't you guys already do this? Well, the thing is, we in class, we're not very good at this. We don't know. We don't bring people back as often as we should, and as adjuncts or in other ways, and we're learning. And so that's one of the great sides of having the partnership, is stuff that humanities professors haven't usually thought of very much, and or humanities or colleges like ours, I think it's fair to say. So we're hoping to do a lot more of that.
That's a great thing to remind our alumni and other individuals. And I know from the advancement side, when we're working to, I focus a lot on annual giving and trying to re-engage. And sometimes when we're trying to re-engage alumni, they may not be ready in a monetary sense, and they don't always realize that that's not always, what we need, and we would love to re-engage them in the classroom if that's something that they are interested in. So thank you for talking about that. We're getting close to our time. So I do want to say thank you so much to Dean Rothis, Dr. Brooks, and Dr. Smith for taking the time today to share this information with us. This is our 17th campus conversation since September. And I will say it's very exciting because one of the common themes is the cross-campus collaboration that I've been seeing since we started here with all of these in September. It's an up and coming theme, and it's very exciting to hear that from everyone and then learn more about the specifics of it when we have these more in-depth campus conversations. So thank you to our audience and attendees for being here today. Please remember that we will send you this recording and the slide deck and a survey, and prepare for the snow tomorrow.
Thanks
Have a good
everyone for coming
afternoon.
up.
Yes, fire up chips. Thank you.
Fire up. Thank you, everyone.